Mac, I heard a great would you rather
Oh, really?
on the Jones and Keefe show today. Now, of
Sure.
course, we invented that. We invented everything that has ever been done on podcast or on
Yep.
radio.
Yep.
It's the future of radio, you jabronis. But the question was, would you rather be a werewolf or a Dracula?
So to me, there's a clear answer here, but I have to consider. So instant lean is werewolf, but
Really?
with werewolf, you don't really get any extracurriculars, no real powers. If you're a Dracula, you get some powers. There's like a power set there, so that is intriguing. However, if you're a Dracula, there's a lot of like weaknesses and it affects you every day. Whereas if you're a werewolf, you're just really dealing with the transformation like once a
I was
month,
going to
couple
say,
times a
how's
month.
your pain tolerance? Because, like, what is it, every 30-ish days we have the full moon?
Sure. But
Because
I've also
transforming into a werewolf, that is very, very painful. We've seen that many of times.
I don't know if it is or not. I can't say that with certainty. I
I
just
would
know
say
that
so.
I would say at least once a month, I'm already waking up in a blur and not knowing where I fell asleep. So I'm sort of accustomed to that. So I'd fall into the werewolf life pretty easily, I feel like. Waking up nude in like a park obviously wouldn't be great, but also I would rather deal with the ramifications of that than like never being able to go out in the sun.
Yeah, also, if you're a werewolf, don't you have memory loss of what you did as the werewolf? You could have some blood on your hands.
Well, I don't know. Because at some point you end up with like a Professor Hulk
Are you
situation,
telling me
right?
that all the werewolfs are lying?
No,
I
I'm
don't
saying
remember eating that kid.
at some point you can sort of maybe become one. Remember that show on MTV like a decade ago where
Go on.
it was it something with Teen Wolf? It might have been called Teen Wolf. I think they could actively turn into werewolves in that show. So I think at some point maybe you harness that. It isn't just a full moon thing. But I think there's more that can go wrong with Dracula than there is with werewolf. So I go werewolf.
But does being a werewolf get you laid?
No, I think you're more fuckable as a Dracula for sure.
One goo, three, yeah! Goo. Jaws 3. Goo. King of Queens. Goo. Meryl Streep. Entertainment.
I'm Goo.
And I am Mac.
And we are the Mac and Goo program. We bring you friendship.
Yep. And today we are bringing you some disappointment amongst Goo and I as friends. We're going to be talking about television programs that have been notoriously snubbed at the Emmys. Of course, the Emmys were this past week, and Goo and I knew all about them. That's why we're doing it after the Emmys, not before the Emmys.
I was going to say, this is either a very timely podcast or we should have done it 2 weeks ago, a week ago. But like we said in our last news dump, we thought that they were announcing Emmy nominations on Sunday. We didn't realize it was the actual Emmys.
Yeah, I don't know. We just missed the boat on that. And again, we did talk about it a couple weeks ago as well. It's been a relatively light year for TV, so maybe we're just not in touch with television this year. But that said, historically, we are very in touch with television. Goo, historically, big TV guy, not so much these days. But
No,
I would
I've
say,
fallen out of love. No,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I've not fallen out of love. I have no time.
yeah, you used to be the TV guy of the program, and now I think I watch more TV than you do.
You know what I used to love was multitasking, playing a nice game of Madden while watching a sitcom.
Is that why you sucked at Madden?
I had a really good rank in Madden 12. Which one had Drew Brees on the cover?
Yeah, maybe in that range. 11.
I had an amazing online rank in that, so you can go ahead and bite your tongue.
Goo, how do you want to kick this off? Do you want to talk about?
Well, should I cite my sources? Because everyone cares about sources these days.
Right,
So I
right,
went
right.
through IndieWire, TV Line, Collider, Yahoo, and I went ham on the Emmys website I just started typing in any show that I could think of, and I got all these results.
You know, it's way easier than all of that. Just going to the show on IMDb and it lists all the nominations that the show has.
You can do the exact same thing on the Emmys website.
Okay. The Emmys
And it
website's a
also
little
tells you who was
convoluted, though.
nominated for certain things every year. It's a little bit easier.
I don't know if it is.
So what I want to start with before we get to the let's call them fucking losers.
Sure. Sure.
Here are some that also pop out to me as like should have gotten a little more love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Now I am talking about the 12:30 program on NBC, not the one that where he went to 11 or when he went to TBS. This
Which
was
ran
the
from
great one.
roughly what 93 to like 08.
I think it was 08 or 07, but it was nominated 28 times. It won 1 Emmy for outstanding writing for a variety, music, or comedy program. That happened in 2007.
What year did Kimmel get the late night show on ABC?
Early 2000s. It might have been like 04
All
or
right.
05.
There was a time, early Kimmel and late Conan, where they were easily the two best at late night, and they had just simply surpassed Letterman and Leno. And it felt like these award shows just failed to recognize that, and it was pretty frustrating because at least the youths were watching those two shows, and the older folks were watching Leno and Letterman.
Well, but also this award, this outstanding variety music comedy, I'm pretty sure that you're also going up against The Daily Show every year.
Yeah, probably.
Which wins, I think, almost every single year. And I want to say that SNL falls into that too.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you might be right about that.
But either way, this is after Conan was named to the Tonight program. So I also feel like this was NBC being like, hey, here's an award because you're our new guy.
That makes sense.
Might be a little bit of paying your dues, if you will. Curb Your Enthusiasm, one of your favorite shows, Mac. Your favorite. Is this your favorite comedy of all time?
Yeah, it's this or The Office. I'd probably lean Curb. Office.
I'm about to go to The Office in a second. Yes.
But I would say Curb. I think Curb is the best comedy of all time, and I think it's the most consistent from season 1 to the final season out of any comedy you could ever name. I guess you could argue there's lulls in there, but
yeah,
it's the most consistent comedy that's ever been on television, and the fact that it never won, or the fact that Larry David never won,
I was going to get to that,
blows my mind.
How many seasons? Is it 13?
I think they just finished with their 12th or 13th. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been nominated 55 times in, miscellaneous awards and whatnot. It has won twice. One for a single cam directional show and then also a directing award. 2, Larry David has never won an Emmy for the show. Now, I understand maybe why the show hasn't won for writing because it's like loosely written, correct? And then they kind of fill in the gap.
It's a lot of improv.
You'd argue that Larry's doing a lot of acting here.
Well, I would say if it's not going to win anything for writing, that only strengthens Larry's argument for actor because he's doing it on the fly often. And on top of this, Susie is one of the greatest television characters of all time. The fact that she never won is insane to me. It's just this show has been so historically snubbed, and it blows my mind because Seinfeld was so loved.
Now, The Office has won 5 Emmy Awards, but you know who never won one? Steve Carell.
Now, here's what I'll say. I think that the Curb is superior to The Office, but I think that Steve Carell's Michael Scott is probably, maybe Walter White, but probably the best character in television history. And it's insane to me, especially after you saw the effects that he had on the show when he left, that they should have went back and gave him an award for one of those first 7 seasons, because the show falls off so drastically just removing that character. It blows my absolute fucking mind that Steve Carell never won.
I'm trying to think of who was in the acting category at that time. I know that Alec Baldwin won a bunch for 30 Rock.
Yeah, but 30 Rock didn't come out till what? 07 or 08. So
do you want the winners or no? Do you want
the Office had already been out for a few years. Go ahead.
Do you
give me
want
the winners.
The fucking winners? Tony Shalhoub.
So first year of The Office is what? 04?
05. So the next year, Tony Shalhoub.
Yep.
And Tony Shalhoub has dominated this. Tony Shalhoub.
That was from Monk.
Yeah. Tony Shalhoub, Kelsey Grammer, and John Lithgow, like, reign supreme.
And don't get me wrong, Monk's a decent show, but at a certain point, you can't just keep giving the same guy the fucking award.
Ricky Gervais for Extras.
Okay, that's a fair one.
Alec Baldwin won 2 straight for Jack Donaghy.
Is that 07, 08?
Yes. No, 08, 09.
Okay.
And then the next two went to I couldn't think of his goddamn. Oh, here Bazinga.
Oh,
Jim Parsons,
Sheldon.
back to back, baby.
Jesus Christ, that show is insanely bad. That's a bad show. But I digress. The fact that you give it to Jack Donaghy in another NBC sitcom over Michael Scott blows my mind. But you know that those fart sniffing
Yeah.
award presenters love that it's a parody of SNL and shows like that. Whereas Michael Scott, and yes, it isn't necessarily the most original character because it's based off of Ricky Gervais's character in the British Office. It
Mhm.
just blows my mind that you would look at those two NBC sitcoms and not give it to Michael Scott and give it to Jack Donaghy.
You know what I do like? And Steve Carell was not nominated in 2012. He was no longer on The Office. But you know who won in 2012?
Oh,
John Cryer. And I'm not even a giant fan of Two and a Half Men or that character, but you know what? I like John Cryer.
all right. Is that so? That just might be. Hey, Charlie Sheen went insane. Let's give
Yeah,
you
we
an
feel
award to piss Charlie Sheen off.
Thanks for sticking around, bud.
Because I think
Love it.
that's what it was. I think that was the first season after Charlie Sheen left.
Yep. And then finally, a show that has won one Emmy, and this is our favorite show that's on television right now, I would say, and that is The Boys. It has won one for stunt coordination. How has Anthony Starr not gotten any credit?
It's absolutely unbelievable. And we are now like years into these superhero shows, so it's not like they're brand new. You're gonna have to start to accept these as mainstream. And Anthony Starr, however you say it, I'm sure it's there's no
Anthony.
H, so I'm sure it's just Anthony. Um, he is I mean, I just talked about Michael Scott, Larry David. He's on the short list for greatest television characters of all time. Never mind the last 10 years, 20 years of all time. Every time he's on screen, he's easily the best character in the scene. I don't know how a critic could watch that show, and maybe they aren't, maybe that's the issue, and not have him nominated, and then not even, or not have them nominated, and beyond that, not have him win for best actor.
Yeah, he's not nominated for either supporting or main. Because I was also questioning, is he a supporting actor? You look at maybe Carl Urban or what's his name there? Little Huey possibly as
I
the
would
main
say the
character. But
first season or two, you could argue he's supporting, but
supporting.
now he's surely the main
Yeah,
actor
no,
there.
he absolutely rules. He's the fucking best. All right, let's go on to some shows that have not won. The ones that this episode is titled Best Shows to Not Win an Emmy. So let's
Mm,
give the people what they came for. The
right.
prior 5 minutes, bullshit.
Horse shit.
Unprofessional bullshit. It's
Manure.
horseshit.
Manure.
Okay, so a show that I loved, it ran for 2 seasons, then it came back. I haven't had a chance to catch up on the newer stuff, but Party Down, which was a Stars comedy, 0 nominations in its 2-season run, / I'm not sure if they've even counted the new stuff.
Yeah, Party Down's a blind spot for me. I am aware
Mhm.
of the show. I've never seen a single episode, but everyone that talks about this show loves this show.
Love that show. The Wire. Have you ever heard of The Wire?
I would say if you don't say Breaking Bad's the greatest show of all time, you might say The Wire is. What I would say about that is I think the highs of Breaking Bad are much higher than in The Wire. However, I have never watched a show as well written or as deep
Mhm.
or as leveled as as The Wire was, and that's even watching with hindsight. I watched it during COVID, so it holds up well. It's one of the best acted series of all times. I don't know. I do not know. And don't get me wrong, this was early HBO show days, so maybe they didn't have as much credit as they do now.
Yeah.
I don't know how this didn't get nominated for everything all the time.
Mac, close your eyes for a second.
Oh, ooh.
How many nominations do you think The Wire got during its 4-season run?
5 seasons.
5-season run.
Uh,
I need to
I,
catch up, but go ahead.
I already saw it.
This
It's two.
is more of a memory thing than anything
Yeah.
else. Two nominations, and it lost
Insane.
both. One to Mad Men, and then
Ugh.
one to The Sopranos.
So that's always a good litmus test for me is how people feel about Mad Men. Because if you love Mad Men, I don't think I like you. I
Mad
don't think
Men
I
got
like
off
you.
to a real hot start, though. Like I really like the first season of Mad Men, and then as John Hamm, dives more into his depravity,
Mm.
I get a little ickier. But then once he finds his second wife, I like her until I don't like her.
Yeah, that show just never did it for me, and I
Okay.
get, and that's a classic show that's gonna win awards because it's a period piece and
Mhm,
whatnot, and the accuracy of all that shit obviously matters, and it
mhm.
should. However, as far as drama went, I was not intrigued by anything in that show.
Also, people that lived during that time fucking love that show,
They do, which
which
does
is
tell you
fine.
how well
Yeah.
made it is. So
If you
fair
make
enough.
any show about the 90s right now, look at my thumbs, Mac. What am I doing?
Come, two comes up.
I didn't do that, guys. For people only listening to the podcast, I didn't cum my pants.
By the way, your other
Yeah.
note here: The Wire lost to House in 2005.
Is that what I have?
House, it lost to
Yes.
House. Are you ball sacking me?
Yeah. Yeah, it
My
lost to
God.
House in '05 and then
Hugh
Mad Men
Laurie
in
and
'08.
House.
And
You
then
kidding me?
keep in mind for nominations, this is during
House.
the time where Sopranos was cleaning up.
House.
House.
Fucking House beat The Wire.
House
Jesus.
MD. He could
Good
solve any
Lord.
problem.
Yeah,
And he had
sure
a
could.
cane. Let's go on to BoJack Horseman. This was a show that I loved the first 3 to 4 seasons of, and then it just became horribly depressing, and I could not watch this cartoon anymore. But it has received 3 nominations in its lifetime, and it's now done. It's done 6 seasons. It was nominated for Best Animated Program in 2019 and 2020. It somehow, this shouldn't even be allowed. In 2019, it lost to The Simpsons?
Yeah, that doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't get that. Simpsons hasn't been good in 20 years. I will say your other note on here, the other show it lost
Yeah.
to, Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty, in my mind, is vastly superior to BoJack, but I do get the argument
Well,
for what
also in
BoJack's
2020,
going
that's
for.
when Rick and Morty was at its height.
True, very true.
And then it also lost for a voice acting performance by Kirsten Shaw in 2017.
Kristen Shaw is great. I
She's
will admit that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, this show right here, possibly the best sketch comedy show of all time. It only had a very short run, 2.5 seasons, but Chappelle's Show got 3 nominations. It was nominated for Outstanding Variety Music or Comedy Series, and then Writing for Variety Music, but lost to The Daily Show.
It was the most popular comedy show on the planet, and it's a shame that Chappelle or any of the writers or anyone on that show never won anything. However, like you said, shine bright so quickly and then it
Mhm.
died. I think if it had come back, if he had made that comeback, it was going to start winning stuff. It just never really gave itself the chance.
A show that is this the longest running live action show of all time now? Live action sitcom of all
I
time?
don't I'm not sure. You would know more
I
than me.
believe it is. So starting in 2005, it's still running right now. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has only been nominated 3 times in its run, and all 3 nominations are for stunt coordination.
And I believe they never got nominated until after they had a whole episode talking about how they
Yes,
had never been
about
nominated.
how
And that was
everybody hates them and how
what 5 years
everybody
ago, 6
loves
years ago?
Louis. Everyone loves the show Louis, but they hate them.
Yeah, I do, and it's almost better that this show hasn't won because this has always
Yeah.
been the underdog, and I
Mhm.
do love this show. It is funny. This is a show that I do understand why critics wouldn't nominate for anything. However, if
Mhm.
the general public, Gen Pop, was voting on stuff, this would have won numerous times.
So let's go back to '05. It has
Mm,
lost to Everybody Loves Raymond. First off, that tells you how long this show has been on the air.
right,
It lost to Everybody Loves Raymond, The Office, 30 Rock multiple times, Modern Family multiple times, Veep multiple times, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Fleabag, Schitt's Creek, Ted Lasso, and The Bear.
I will say I prefer The Office over it. I prefer Veep over it. Schitt's Creek might be a toss-up. So it is losing to shows that
Yeah.
are mostly deserving. I always enjoyed Modern Family. Going back and rewatching Modern Family, I really like that show too.
Oh,
So I
it's
don't
a great
I don't
show.
mind it losing to that either. So that's just a tough
No, but you could
category,
also
obviously.
look at like why isn't Caitlin Olsen, or why isn't like maybe I understand like well, but later Rob McElhaney stuff could possibly be put up there,
For
or
sure.
Danny DeVito as supporting actor, Charlie Day
Yeah,
as supporting actor.
and especially if you guys have never looked at the Emmys website, there are awards for 1,000 things every year, and the fact that it couldn't win one thing is mind blowing.
All right, this next 2 I have no notes on. I don't even have the nominations for the second show, but it boggles my mind that the Bob Newhart show and then Newhart. So this is 6 seasons, and then 8 seasons. So 14 years of Bob Newhart being on sitcom television. No Emmy wins.
It's really fucking weird to think about how often it is referenced or ripped off by award-winning shows and even by critics who are reviewing other shows, and the fact that it never was awarded anything. It doesn't make a lot of sense because Newhart is the inspiration for a lot of things in today's shows in over the last 20 years.
But also, like, television studios liked the Bob Newhart show so much that they said, let's do the exact same thing, but for 8 years this time.
Yeah, for even longer.
Yes. The next show is, I think, one of your favorites, actually. This was on your top 50 television shows of all time?
So
Question
this
mark?
show, the first 4 seasons are awesome, and then it
Mhm.
slowly beats you up the rest of the way. But the first 4 seasons of Sons of Anarchy is what we're talking about are pretty great.
And now, I do believe that Katie Sagal won a Golden Globe for this. By the way, these shows might have won Golden Globes. We only care about Emmys right now. We're
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
down the
yeah.
establishment.
Yeah, some of these have won Globes and SAGs, but we're
Yes.
talking specific Emmys here.
So Sons of Anarchy has only had 5 nominations, and one of them was for original main title theme music in 2009.
The funny part is most the 4 of these 5 nominations came when the show kinda got bad. The show kinda sucked by the time this
Almost like
started
a
getting
legacy
nominated.
thing of like, hey,
Yep,
thanks for your prior
yep.
work.
Yeah, if no one knows the story, I actually stopped watching Sons of Anarchy. I believe it's 5 episodes into season 5 when it's something very significant happens when at the end of season 4 they don't kill a certain character and then they go and kill my favorite character right at the beginning of season 5. Really pissed me off, and it really showed you what they were going to do. They were going to keep making episodes just basically for money is what I felt like. And that's really what ended up happening. So I think it ended up running 9 seasons, and I would say there's more bad than good ultimately.
Really?
But the first 4 seasons are pretty great.
Okay, a show that I know you can't really get through, but if you're talking about comedy sitcoms in the 2010s, New Girl did it for 7 years, and Max Greenfield, although he was nominated once, maybe should have got a little more love.
Max Greenfield to me is the funniest part of the show by a
Yeah.
mile. So I agree with you wholeheartedly there. This is not a show I dislike.
Mhm.
This is just a show that has repeatedly been oversold to me. So the couple times I've tried to watch it, it doesn't quite jive with what people say. So I just stopped watching. That's all.
5 nominations, and I'm also, although Zoe Deschanel, she was nommed, but this is also during a time where Tina Fey is still going for 30 Rock, Amy
Yeah.
Poehler is going for Parks and Rec, and we'll get to Amy Poehler in a second. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus soon will be doing Veep, so
Yeah. Yeah. Fucked. She got
no
fucked.
real shot there. A show that I loved on HBO, and it was only on there for 2 years, and it did get 9 nominations, so credit to them there, but never won, The Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, this is just a show that's off the beaten path that I don't even think anyone would be upset it never won because it was never that popular, but it's certainly one of those shows that if someone this is the opposite to me. Talk about litmus test for Mad Men. If
Yeah.
I find out someone likes Flight of the Conchords, immediately my
I'm
favorite
going to
person.
talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you want me to, I'd make love with you. That's why I loved that first Muppet movie that came out in 2011, because it was all Brett McKenzie music.
Yeah, and it sounded just like Flight of the
I'm like,
Conchords
this is
songs.
just Flight of the Conchords, but with Muppets. This is fantastic. Another show that I watched way too much of,
You sure did.
I did, and it was nominated 8 times in its 6 or 7 season run, and that is Empire, Fox's Empire. And while I don't think the show deserves an Emmy, or really most of the cast deserves an Emmy, Taraji P. Henson was great on the show, and she was nommed twice, but give Taraji a little love
I love me some Taraji P. Henson. I give Taraji love all the time, just behind closed doors.
in your mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. A show that's still on the air, started in 1999. It's not a sitcom, but it is animated. It has been nominated 10 times, and that is SpongeBob SquarePants.
Now, don't get me wrong. I haven't watched an episode of SpongeBob in maybe 15 years, but there are some pretty amazing and significant episodes of SpongeBob that I am stunned hasn't garnered an Emmy win. And the show is so significant in general.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it hasn't gotten a legacy win at this point.
Not only that, like there's so many episodes that I could sit down with, I could find funny. And then
Yep,
my son, who's 4, could also find funny. A
100%.
teenager also find funny.
Yep, I totally agree. That's actually kind of mind blowing that SpongeBob has not won, and only 10 noms over
Mhm.
25 years. That's insane.
Nominated 13 times, 1966 through 1969. The OG Star Trek.
I mean, it's kind of isn't that kind of weird that for time and place and being as like new sci-fi thing that it didn't
Yeah.
win anything.
Like
You would
some kind
think
of
it
like
would have.
prop design or something. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
understand
kind of
maybe not
weird,
the acting or something, but
right? And maybe they didn't have as many awards back then, but that is a little bizarre. It never won.
stage design, stunt coordination, something like
Right,
that.
right.
Yeah. I never really watched The Good Place. Did you watch The Good Place?
So I've watched the first season of The Good
Okay.
Place, and it's one of those shows that unfortunately it feels really telegraphed. I know
Mhm.
there's this whole big twist ending to season one. Um, it's just I don't know. It's not lazy. I'm not calling it lazy. It just I felt like anyone that has watched a good amount of TV could tell where this show was
Mhm.
going.
It has been nominated or was nominated 13 times, never won. A show that was nominated 14 times and never picked up a single Emmy is Parks and Recreation that ran from '09 to 15. And I think it really just has more to do with bad timing because you could also say it was never the best comedy on television. And I don't think you could really argue that because when it started out, 30 Rock was still dominating, The Office was still on, and then it ran during Modern Family's fucking dominance, and then Veep.
Yeah, that really is tough timing, and I think Parks and Recreation is one of those shows that actually got more popular
Yeah.
via streaming upon
Yes.
rewatches and people really figuring out how much they had either missed or how much they underrated it. Um, that show, but I will say when you compare it to those shows, Modern Family, Veep, The Office, and 30 Rock, I think Parks and Rec's peak is much shorter than those shows. It's got like 2.5 seasons that are really great, and then the outside of those 2.5 aren't so great, so that
Mhm.
hurts it as well.
Yeah, because Amy Poehler did get nommed a bunch of times, but so I believe she lost to maybe Tina Fey, maybe Julie Bowen or something like that. And then once Julia Louis Dreyfus started to win, that was it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now let's get to the show that was nominated 53 times and never won a goddamn thing. And yes, it is a spinoff. But some might say that it's better than the original show, and that is Better Call Saul.
Some people would make that argument. I would not.
Okay.
However, I would make the argument that the final 2 seasons are of Breaking Bad quality.
Mhm.
Um, this is insane to me that a show being this well written, this well
Yeah.
acted, this thrilling could never win an Emmy in its 7, 8 years on screen. I think it was 7 seasons total. Um, not only was Bob Odenkirk one of the best characters on television for a long time, Breaking Bad included, this show was phenomenal. It introduces Rhea Seehorn as his love interest in the show, who's also great, and she does an unbelievable job. She
Mhm.
goes tit for tat with Odenkirk. But the one that really sold it to me, and the one that I thought they would finally get over the hump for, is Tony Dalton plays Lalo Salamanca in the final 2 seasons and a little bit in season 5 as well. I don't know how to me, he was the best character on the show for 2 seasons. Even when you consider the whole Breaking Bad universe, besides Gus, you could argue he was the best character in the whole Breaking Bad universe. So it's absolutely fucking mind blowing to me that he didn't win an Emmy. He was nominated for SAG Best Supporting Actor award. He didn't even get nominated for an Emmy. Goo. That's insane to me, and that's what really told me that this show was never going to win an Emmy. When he never got nominated, that's insane, absolutely insane. I mean,
Yep.
this show is an all time great show. It may be a step or a half step below Breaking Bad, but when a show is that good for that long, and for it to get better as the seasons went along, as not a lot of shows do, uh, I don't know how it doesn't win. I don't know how it doesn't get a legacy award at the end either.
You ready for this?
Yeah,
It lost for Best Drama Series to Game of Thrones Season 6,
fair enough.
The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah,
Handmaid's Tale.
yeah.
When I first wrote this, I accidentally wrote TAIL, and I'm like, that'd be a funny series. Game of Thrones season 7.
Now that's the second to
Okay.
last season. That
Yep. So
was
you're
like
stretching it a
some
little
people
thin
said
there.
Mets and Mets. Yep,
Then it lost to season 8 of Game of Thrones,
insane,
the one that
insane,
most people don't like.
and yeah, that's insane.
Succession, The
Okay, I
Crown,
do know. Yeah, yeah.
Succession,
Hmm.
Succession.
Listen, Succession's good. It's a good
Yeah.
show. Better Call Saul is better. It's a better show. It's more thrilling. There's more things going on. There's more moving parts. And I get, yes, it is a quote unquote spinoff, and maybe that's what just hurt this forever. But for it to lose 3 times to Game of Thrones and 3 times to Succession, that makes no sense to
You
me.
couldn't find
I,
a little spot for it?
I'll let people argue that Game of Thrones is better. The way Better Call Saul finishes on the highest of
Mhm.
highs, to me, that would make it superior. But again, I never watched Game of Thrones, so that maybe you can decide that. I just don't know how it doesn't sneak one in there.
Bob Odenkirk, in the years that he was nominated, lost to Rami Malek in Mr.
Fuck
Robot,
you. Fuck
Sterling
you.
K. Brown in This Is Us,
Okay.
Billy Porter in Pose, Jeremy Strong in Succession, Lee Jong-jae in Squid Game, and Kieran Culkin in Succession.
So you can give 2 Succession guys an award, and you can't give Odenkirk one. I mean,
Let
the
Odenkirk live his life.
Sterling Brown, every time he's nominated, I feel like he's going to win something, and he probably deserves it every time. I'm not upset about that.
I mean,
I've
he
never
was the
seen,
main reason to watch This Is Us.
yeah, I've never seen Pose. I'm sure Billy Porter was great. Obviously, Squid Game took the world by storm.
Skid Game.
Rami Malek was decent in the first season of Mr. Robot. I will admit that. But Bob Odenkirk, man, fuck, goddamn.
And then Rhea Seehorn, in the 2 years that she was nominated for supporting actress, she lost to Julia Gardner in Ozark.
Eh.
And then Jennifer Coolidge in White Lotus.
By the way, the fact that Rhea Seehorn was only nominated twice is a travesty as well. She was
And look,
so good throughout the whole series.
I love Jennifer Coolidge, but it's all kind of a joke, right?
Yeah, do we need to give White Lotus an award? Do we
White
really?
Lotus won a bunch of awards.
All right, do we need to give Jennifer Coolidge an acting award for White Lotus? Do we?
Well, I like her. She wanted a hot dog real bad.
Oh, so frustrating.
Let's get into Maxac.
And Maxac could be anything. It could be a boat. And I wrote down the question. It was real simple. I said, Mac, Agatha, and the Penguin are starting right now. And what are you watching on television? And you went ahead and did a bunch of notes. So you can tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, first of all, part of the impetus for this episode was Agatha and Penguin kicking off this week. I'm certainly more looking forward to Penguin, but there have been some real positive reports on Agatha. So I'm looking forward to both, and I'm looking forward to catching them each and every week for the next, I don't know, 8 weeks, however long they're going to be.
100
6
weeks.
But I figured we'll use this as an opportunity to take a quick history lesson, quick trip down memory lane for Marvel shows at
Go
the
ahead.
Emmys.
Yeah.
And this is pretty interesting. So just real quick, there was obviously Marvel shows on network television before Netflix. We had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That did get 2 nominations for Outstanding Visual Effects, didn't win. We get to the Netflix shows, Goo. Daredevil, Jess Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Defenders, and The Punisher. And there was actually a couple wins in here. None for Daredevil. Daredevil was
Which is
5
crazy
times.
because the hallway scene and the stairway scene, stunt coordination, come on.
And again, the Emmys, they give out awards for like singular episodes too. So that's also another reason to highlight how that didn't win anything. Jess Jones was nominated 3 times, did win, but it's kind of a bullshit one. It won for Outstanding Original Main Title Theme Music. So sure, we can count
Yeah, but
it.
we've already won that 3 times.
Luke Cage, 1 for 1. Outstanding Stunt Coordination for a Drama Series, Limited Series, or Movie.
Okay.
Clearly no nominations for Iron Fist. That's not surprising. 1 nomination for The Defenders, 1 nomination for The Punisher, but overall 2 wins for the Netflix shows. And I think that sounds about right. Those were all solid. I think people really, really like Daredevil, and a lot of people really like Jess Jones, but that's not totally surprising. And they didn't last forever, so no chance at a legacy award. On to Disney Plus. WandaVision was 2020, right? I believe that happened. That came
Pandemic,
out. Yeah. So WandaVision kicks it off real hot. 23 nominations, Goo, for WandaVision. And I'm not the biggest WandaVision fan, but I recognize why critics would love this show, especially the first 4 episodes of the show. It ended up with 3 Emmy wins for Outstanding Fantasy Sci-Fi Costumes, Outstanding Original Music and Lyrics for Agatha All Along,
Mhm.
and Outstanding Production Design for a Narrative Program, half hour. I guess they differentiate between a full hour and half hour. Falcon and Winter Soldier got 5 noms, no wins. Loki, 9 noms, no wins. Hawkeye, 2 noms, no wins. Moon Knight, 8 nominations and did win. Got a win for Outstanding Sound Editing. Miss Marvel, 4 noms, 1 win. Outstanding
Wow.
Motion Design. She-Hulk, no noms. Secret Invasion, no noms. Those were back to back. That's a tough stretch. So if you're counting at home, that's now 3 Marvel shows. She-Hulk, Secret Invasion, and Iron Fist did not get any noms. And somehow, some way, Echo squeaked out a nomination. How about that?
What was it for?
I don't know. I didn't care to look it up.
Good research.
If you want to include What If in there, it did get 3 nominations, and we did get 1 win. That was for Chadwick Boseman for Outstanding Character Voiceover Performance, and it was awarded posthumously to him. So I think that did play a little bit in it. So in summation, 3 shows didn't receive a nomination out of the 15 or 16 we talked about. Iron Fist, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion. The only show to win more than 1 Emmy was WandaVision. That is a little surprising. But 0 acting awards, unless you want to include Boseman's voice acting win for What If. That's a little surprising, which means that tells you, I think Marvel's TV shows still has something to shoot for, you know?
Yeah.
As successful as WandaVision was, they're still shooting for something. So maybe that bodes well for the future. And if you want to talk DC shows, because the Penguin's upcoming, Peacemaker got 1 nomination. How about that?
Batman the Animated Series actually won for Outstanding Animated Series.
There you go.
So you want that?
Sure.
Top of my
There
head.
you
You want some more? Don't
nice
ask
fun
for any
facts.
more. I don't have any more. Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. That is Mac Shift 7 and Goo. I'm losing my mind today, Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify, but more importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's Watertown Sportswear on 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown, watertownsportswear.com. Expert screen printing and embroidery.
Hey, Alexa, play the Mac and Goo Movie Club on the iHeartRadio app. Give it a second.
Yeah.
If you're on YouTube right now, thumbs up, like, subscribe. Do you know where all the buttons are?
I think the subscribe is below me right here.
I'm on
under my
YouTube
finger.
a lot, and I have no idea where any of the buttons are.
I think it's the lower right of the video is the
Okay,
subscribe.
so this way? This way.
Where I'm pointing over here.
This is like a weatherman scenario. I don't know which way the
Yeah.
country's behind me, so. So do that. Leave a nice comment, please. Also, news dump at the beginning of next week, and then I'm not sure what we're doing at the end of next week, but the people want October back. So
Do they? Do they really?
we've already gotten 1 tweet about it. So October might be on its way back.
All right. That's 1 vote for October, 0 votes for everything else. So we just need 2 tweets. 2 tweets will get you the win.
That's all we need. That's all we need. So check us out next week. Tuesdays are Goose Days. I abuse kangaroos.
Bye.
And Burton.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.
Now it's time for girls jumping on trampolines.